A 1000 USD phone against a 199 USD phone. Are you crazy to compare this to, Adam? Yep, because in this video, we will together find out if it's really worth spending so much to get a pricey flagship phone in this extreme comparison video. Now let's start with the design, because this year's S24 Plus was the saving grace because of its newer boxy design and defrosted glass at the back, which made this phone feel way better compared to the S23 Plus. Then the CMF phone, on the other hand, not only has a very unique look but honestly feels more premium, not only from an aesthetic point of view but also on how it felt in the hands. And even though the rear panel is not glass like the S24 Plus, but the matte finish at the back meant that it totally repels fingerprints like a champ. And while this does come down to a personal preference, to me, this new CMF Phone 1's design at the back was really refreshing. And how refreshing? Well, this is all thanks to the modular form factor at the back, with all the interchangeable options for the phone's rear panel, with dedicated screws surrounding the phone and also other additional accessories that integrates well with this circular accessory point at the back, as seen in my previous video of this phone. So I would give a point for the CMF Phone 1 for this category. Now we all know that Samsung have been producing the world's best screens for almost every smartphone, and the flagship S24 Plus obviously has the best of the best. The screen brightness and the vibrancy not only beats this CMF Phone 1 but probably any other smartphone out right now. The bezels on the CMF Phone 1 is also thicker, hence it did look a little outdated, but these thicker bezels and this particular screen is to be expected since their parent brand Nothing is using a way more expensive to produce stretchable OLED screen, which if inserted in this CMF phone, there's no way that it would be this affordable. However, by itself, if you're not comparing both phones side by side, the CMF Phone 1 screen doesn't look like a cheap looking display, and trust me, there are many phones like the baseline Redmi's or even Realme phones that talks about having a high quality display but not really looking like a high quality display. Then another thing to note is the refresh rate, because like smartphone displays mentioned, not every high refresh rate are created equal, and while the CMF Phone 1 does go up to 120Hz, but it's not as fluid and adaptive as the S24 Plus. But once again, this is only apparent if you compare both phones side by side. So obviously this category goes to the S24 Plus. So before we compare the cameras, the S24 Plus has a bigger advantage when it comes to the amount of lenses and of course the video recording capabilities. So let's see how exactly the specs and the lenses performs then. Now, since both has a 50 megapixel camera, so we shall start with that high megapixel mode. And yes, to our surprise, it looks the same, and believe it or not, the color accuracy on the brown building on the left was more accurate on the CMF Phone 1's image than the S24 Plus. Then on this second high megapixel mode image, the details are the same, but when you would see a little more detail is if you punch in about 4 times on this mode, but yeah, only if you punch in close to the image. So for me, color accuracy would be a better thing to have compared to having a very crazy amount of detail since you are posting this up on social media. Now, since the CMF Phone 1 has just one lens and a digital zoom up to 2 times, when comparing side by side, the main lens look once again very similar to each other. Color accuracy once again goes to the CMF Phone 1, and as usual, the images on Samsung phones has always been a bit more saturated. And the same could be said for their 2 times zoom images too, and the color consistency on the CMF Phone 1 when changing between the 1 times to the 2 times zoom also performed surprisingly well. The dynamic range of the skies was also equally as good as seen in this next image. Then as for the portrait mode, once again matches each other when it comes to objects, and while the S24 Plus does look like there's more shallow depth of field on the background blur, but of course that could be adjusted accordingly. Then there's also the 2 times zoom option in this particular portrait mode if you want to punch in more. And once again, the CMF Phone 1 still look great with more natural colored skin tones as well. Then as for the regular selfie shots, the CMF Phone 1's image processing does give a bit more smoother tone to my skin's wrinkly face. And since I don't mind my wrinkly face, so I prefer the less softer look that the S24 Plus has. And when switching to the portrait selfie, the subject to background blur on both was equally as good, and once again enhanced more on the smoother skin on the CMF Phone 1. So if you prefer this smoother skin kind of look, then you would prefer the CMF Phone 1, but once again, not really for me. Then another surprising area that did very well on the CMF Phone 1 was the nighttime shots as seen in this main lenses, because it handled the shadows and even the highlights on the lamppost like a champ. But you do see a tiny bit of loss in quality on the 2 times zoom at night, but only a very tiny bit. Then the nighttime portrait did a way better job on the S24 Plus for people with a nicer contrast of the skin tones, but the subject to background blur on both phones was equally as good. But what's interesting is that when it comes to objects, the CMF Phone 1 does a better job in terms of the details and the edge detection as well. Then the nighttime selfie photos were good on the CMF Phone 1, but the color accuracy was a little better on the S24 Plus, and both performed great on the edge detection. Then as for video, as mentioned, the specs are obviously higher on the S24 Plus, allowing recording up to 8K 30fps. So for this case, let's just compare the 4K 30fps instead. First, looking at the daytime video quality side by side for the main lenses, it was on par with the quality of the images as seen earlier, and so was the 2x zoom video as well. Image stabilization wise, the S24 Plus does a better job, but only just slightly, and this was also the case for the 2x zoom video. And since the front camera on the CMF Phone 1 can only go up to 1080p, here's a video recording on each, where the image stabilization is equally as good. But when it comes to the dynamic range, the front camera on the CMF Phone 1 was overexposed, and I would say that this area would be the most obvious winner for the S24 Plus in this particular moment. And as for the nighttime video recording for the rear, it did have the same results as the images too, and the front video recording quality was degraded over here on the CMF Phone 1. And speaking of video recording, here is an audio and video recording sample comparing both phones for a vlogging situation for you to hear how it sounds.
Okay, so this is 1080p for both the Samsung Galaxy S24 Plus and also the CMF Phone 1. Dynamic range seems to be okay. I guess I have to see it post when I put it side by side. But this is also a vlogging test for you all to hear. Test 1, 2, test 1, 2. This is for the front camera using 1080p since the CMF Phone 1 has only 1080p, so you can be the judge.
So, how is it? Well, for this camera comparison, I'll give you the opportunity to give your thoughts instead. So let us know in the comment section below, and if you guys are enjoying this video so far, a nice big thumbs up would be very much appreciated, and a subscription would be lovely too. Thank you very much in advance. Now, as for gaming, the CMF Phone 1 uses the same chipset as the Oppo Reno 12 Pro, which I've just recently reviewed, and the gaming performance on the Oppo Reno 12 Pro just sucked. Like seriously. So did it suck on the CMF Phone 1? Well, the good news is that it didn't. And this is because of its dedicated gaming mode, which boosts the phone's gaming performance from a software and a hardware perspective. Now, when this game mode is turned on, Genshin Impact was very playable at settings to high 60 FPS with motion blur turned on. And considering a phone with this kind of a price factor, I would say that that is mind-blowing to say the least. Now, there was a significant battery drain on this particular mode, but the good news is there was no overheating, and if you turn off the game mode on the CMF Phone 1, you can still game comfortably at medium settings at 60 FPS with motion blur turned off. Then on the S24 Plus, it performs best at the higher settings with motion blur turned on, but its battery drain was less significant compared to the CMF Phone 1 when it comes to gaming in this particular settings, but the device did get quite warm after 15 minutes of continuous gameplay. So yeah, it is exciting because even with a low quality chipset on the CMF Phone 1, in this gaming department, the CMF Phone 1 did perform very well. So I would give this a draw when it comes to the gaming performance, because this software magic on the CMF Phone 1 was really great, especially when it comes to the game mode, to make it very on par with something like a flagship phones like this. So this is why, my friends, that software plays a huge role in everything, which brings us to our next topic, which is the software. Now, in every single review of my Samsung phones, I've always said about how One UI is my favorite Android skin because of how it navigates through the phone nicely with very thoughtful UI and overall navigation. But with the Nothing OS version 2.6, I'm starting to see Carl Pei's team really pushing the boundaries to make this OS the best, and I can already see that they are doing a fantastic job since its first release. Now, besides the game mode as mentioned earlier, the new updated icons and the signature Nothing OS software gives that sort of a character that you're holding a phone which has a nice and a refreshed look. And this nice refresh look to the UI also has no bloatware at all. And while the S24 Plus has very little bloatware, where mainly it is their own software or even Google's, it is nowhere near as what Xiaomi and Oppo does with their smartphones by having tons of those. Now, at this point in time, the Galaxy AI on the S24 Plus is surely an amazing software feature to beat, with plenty of user-centric features for all of us to use. And while the CMF Phone 1 carries some of the ChatGPT related integration from the Nothing OS, I personally feel that Galaxy AI has more advanced features when it comes to the overall usage of the phone, making it more reliable from a user's experience daily. And here's where I would give 2 points on the S24 Plus, but I would give 1.5 points to the CMF Phone 1 for its very refreshing look once again on the overall UI. Now, you want to know what's the biggest surprise of this whole review? Well, it is this battery category, my friends. Yup, because this 4900 milliamps of battery on the S24 Plus gave me an average of 6 hours of screen on time at 10% battery with dark mode turned on. But the 5000 milliamps battery, only 100 milliamps more, but it gave me an average of 9 hours of screen on time when I was at 10% battery at dark mode turned on, which was massive, and it was really great to know because with only 100 milliamps higher, it gave us a massive screen on time. And when you compare spec to spec, the S24 Plus wins with a higher 45 watt compared to 33 watts charging, and of course the S24 Plus also has wireless charging. So that's it, my overall extreme comparison between the CMF Phone 1 and the Samsung Galaxy S24 Plus. So that is the conclusion, and I hope this video gave you an answer whether or not it's really worth spending so much on the S24 Plus or other flagships compared to this CMF Phone 1. And of course, if you want to learn more about this CMF Phone 1, check out my further hands-on review on that over here.